I very much support what the Noble Lady, Lady Noakes, is trying to say here. The erasure of women in public life, in literature, in all sorts of ways has horrified me. The debate has become so toxic, so unacceptable, that many of us do keep our heads down and try not to engage at all. And I'm afraid that is quite often what I do, simply because I work on so many issues, and it's very difficult when you get distracted by this sort of vileness and hate. However, the Noble Lady, Lady Noakes, said that only women get pregnant. Now, legally, that isn't true anymore, because trans men have pregnancies and they have babies. I have held a baby by a trans man. And so perhaps the Noble Lord the Minister would like to put women and trans men into the bill. That might be an acceptable way forward for all of us. The Noble Lady, Lady Noakes as well talked about woke Brighton. And now I come from Brighton. When I was there, it wasn't woke. That was in the 50s and 60s. But the whole thing about the chest feeding was absolutely ludicrous, because, of course, men have breasts. They get breast cancer. They have breasts too. So the whole thing was utter stupidity. And you have to wonder who thinks these things up. I would also, it's an interesting point she made as well about the wording being at odds with other drafting, and that does seem a little bit strange these days, but that is something I gather the Noble Lord the Minister is going to expand on. And of course, one of the things we could all do, most of the speeches in this chamber today have been very, very concerned with the depiction of women and how we are treated now in society. Well, one thing we can do is make misogyny a hate crime. That's something that we should do urgently, and we should raise that at every single opportunity, so that actually people who treat women in that sort of way are actually brought to justice on it. On the bill, on the wider aspects of the bill, of course it's an utterly unfair bill. I can see why it's being brought in, but why not for all women? It's absolutely appalling that this is only for a tiny section of very privileged women, of elite women. It should be for all women. And why discretionary power from the Prime Minister? That's awful, because the Prime Minister is most often a man, so it has to be a man's discretionary power. At the other end, in the other place, the MP Stella Creasy wrote to Penny Mordaunt, the Paymaster General, and I'd like to read just a few words from that letter, because I thought it exemplified why this bill is so inadequate. She says, the Equality and Human Rights Commission recently described instances of pregnancy and maternity discrimination as one of the most urgent, immediate threats to equality during the pandemic. A survey by Pregnant Then Screwed found 46% of women who've been suspended from work because of their pregnancy have been suspended on incorrect terms, including 33% on furlough and another 13% on sick pay, or told to take holiday or to start maternity pay. We do not have equality in Britain. We are meant to be a foremost democracy in the world, and we don't have equality for 50% of our population. And it strikes me that there must be many, many women who've been held back by this, because misogyny is so entrenched in our society. We don't even notice it. We don't see it when it's happening. And many thousands of women, millions, have been held back from actually doing all that they can to improve society. And again we hear that when you have women on boards, for example, when you have women as part of teams and work teams, the work is better, the thinking is better, because it's a different perspective. And so, quite honestly, while of course this bill is perfectly acceptable in its very narrow, late way, we can't blame the Noble Lord the Minister for it being this late, but we can blame him perhaps for it being so narrow. So perhaps that's a message he could take back. The Noble Lady, Lady Hayter, in her opening remarks said, it's a tiny step. Dear me, a tiny step on the right path. But really, let's just see a few more giant steps, can we?